I want to tell you the story about, just a little quick story about one feature, the 12-year exclusivity. Henry Waxman was chairman of the Commerce Committee when all this happened, from here in California, who has a real terrible view of this industry. He was insisting on a 0 period of exclusivity for biologics. We finally moved him to 5. President Obama wanted no more than 7. In the last days of negotiations that were occurring at the White House, you know, they had no ordinary conference committee between the House and the Senate. The Senate had passed a bill, the House wouldn't pass it. The House had passed a bill, the Senate wouldn't take it. So they were all meeting at the White House, trying to work out the differences. And the more they worked out differences, the further they got apart. The bill was falling apart. The one thing the president asked for from all of them was a 7-year exclusivity on biologics. Now, I know that the exclusivity has to work with patent law, and patent law is not the greatest, as you know. We give a much more and better protection to a fountain pen than we give to a new cancer drug in America. That's a shame. But 7 years of exclusivity compared to 10 years in Europe would have been a disaster for us. And it was the one thing the president was insisting upon. And then Scott Brown got elected in Massachusetts, and he no longer had 60 votes. And they had to go through this very complex process called reconciliation. And under reconciliation, they couldn't change the 12-year victory we had won in the House and the Senate. And it's only because of Scott Brown's election that we succeeded in keeping that 12-year data exclusivity for the advancement of biologic investigations and new inventions. I thank God for Scott Brown for that one election. That one feature in Obamacare, may not, who can put a value on that? It may mean that somebody here in this state, knowing they have 12 years more of data protection, can move on and expend the incredible amount of money they have to spend to develop a drug like Avastin. That took 15 years. It took $1.2 billion. The first thing I did when I joined PhRMA was to travel to California, go to Genentech, and meet that team and thank them personally. There's a lot of crying and hugging, you can imagine. They told me nobody ever comes back to say thank you. Well, I was able to say thank you in a big way by fighting to protect that single provision that might encourage another team to invent another drug like Avastin. That's going to save somebody else's life. And that's what we did at PhRMA. We basically fought to keep the spirit and the investment incentive behind new inventions, new research and development, new production of new products that save lives across the world. And if we can make some money doing it, so much the better. But our principal goal was to beat disease at every level and to extend and improve the lives of human beings on the face of the planet. That's why you're here. That's why I started this conversation by saying thank you. So what has happened in 2013? 2013 was so-called status quo election. Not quite. Democrats gained seats in the Senate, and they gained seats in the House. In the next 2 years, they're going to make a big effort to regain the House and capture Democratic control of the House and Senate, and the presidency has just been won again by Mr. Obama. Implementation of Obamacare will occur inside that blanket. How it's implemented, how it occurs, whether or not there are amendments to it. By the way, there have been 3 amendments already to Obamacare that are passed and signed into law. There were small changes. But there were either going to be new small changes or big changes. We're going to see IPAB formed. We're going to see 2017 come when many big companies will have the option of deciding to drop out of coverage of their employees. We're going to see all kinds of changes. Who's in charge of the House and Senate and the White House in 2017 is going to make a big difference about whether or not we end up moving toward a single-payer system, whether we end up with an IPAB that is run more like NICE in Europe, or whether we still have a place where a doctor can sit down with a patient and his wife and say, I know Avastin's not meant for you, but I think it might work and we're going to try it if you're willing to try it. It's a beautiful thing in America that we can still do that. And you and I ought to fight continually to make sure we still can, but we might not be able to, depending upon how the politics of 2013 plays out in 14 and 16. big issues ahead. What difference does the election make? It means that Fred Upton is now chairman of the Commerce Committee instead of Henry Waxman on the House side today. It means that we can at least hold the line against things that might happen in the Senate, where there might be an aptitude to do something damaging to the spirit of invention, and they may change the tax code. They may or may not do any tort reform. We're going to talk a little bit on the panel about some of the inhibitions to development and production of new products in America and the spirit of invention. They may or may not reform the FDA. They might bring it into the 21st century, let it languish in the 19th the way it is. Who knows? All we know is that who commands the committees of Congress in the House and the Senate are going to make a big difference in the way health care is implemented in this country, and more importantly, whether or not we'll continue to invest the billions of dollars that it takes to produce new products to save the lives of not only Americans, but people all over the world. There are a lot of problems here. There are a lot of questions about how some of those laws are going to be implemented. There are a lot of questions about whether or not the FDA is going to get smart about all the new sciences, or whether the scientists are going to continue to run faster than the FDA and the bureaucrats who do their best, but are nevertheless hampered by old procedures and old structures and old paradigms. It's shocking to me that we still got to bring paper to the FDA in an age where our kids are competing with kids all over the world on the internet, and where literally digital features are driving businesses to more competitive and efficient models across the world. It shocks me to think that we still have to pass laws to incentivize the FDA to speed the process of certain products, when the truth is we ought to speed the process of all the products that might aid the development of better medicines and therapies for the people of this country and the world. It shocks me to think that the European systems are now regarded as better, more efficient, faster than our own procedures in Washington, D.C. We shouldn't let that happen. We have been a leader in innovation in the world. We have been the center of the production of new concepts and ideas and therapies and medicines in the whole world. We have provided them to the people across the planet. We ought to continue to be that leader, but we're on the brink of losing that leadership. If our tax laws are changed improperly, already right now, I mean, most of the companies I know are making more of their profit from markets in the developing world than they are in America. That wasn't true 5, 10 years ago. Most of their profits were being made in this country. As they make those profits overseas, will they be allowed to bring them back and reinvest them in research facilities here? Or will they be obliged to invest them in research and development facilities elsewhere because our tax laws say, if you bring it back, we can double tax you? That's a pretty big question they're going to face as they go into tax reform this year. There's only one industry that has a program of repatriation like that. It's the oil and gas industry. Has a thing called dual capacity. It's allowed to bring back some of its revenue from overseas and put them into drilling and production in this country. Thank God we got that. They're threatening that even. If they kill that, how are we ever going to get a proposal that allows the repatriation of dollars to our high-tech industry, which in combination with our pharmaceutical industry could still become the leader, still be the leader in the world in the new fields of cancer therapies and drugs and all the other diseases that threaten us? Will we ever get tort reform? And when I was in Congress, we passed 2 little tort reform bills. One on medical devices, when the raw materials were going to go out of production because of all the lawsuits. Dow Chemical had won 24 lawsuits against people suing them, the trial lawyers suing them for their products. They had won every one, but the cost of defense was more than the profit they made from the products. They were going to go out of business making those products. We reformed the law because we brought patients in the hearing rooms. We demonstrated what would happen to patients if they didn't have new titanium shafts for the little ballerinas whose legs were cancer-ridden, or shunts for the hydrocephalic child who needed renewed shunts every now and then. We passed a little tort reform. We passed a tort reform on securities litigation reform when new innovative companies were being sued every day by a guy in California named Bill LaRock. Cookie-cutter lawsuits just to shake them down. We passed that law over Clinton's veto. That almost never happens. There have only been 2 bills to override a president's veto in my memory since Nixon. One of them was a little tort reform bill, securities litigation reform, to allow companies to continue to invest and innovate in the high-tech areas without being sued to death. Will we ever get broad tort reform? Will we ever get rid of all these strike suits and all these frivolous lawsuits that plague and add and cost burden to those of you trying to invest and build new products and delivery systems for the medicines we produce? I don't know. It's a tough gamble. Who runs the Senate, who runs the House will make a big difference. You think about that. When I used to talk to crowds at the pharma companies, sometimes it was a packed crowd, sometimes it was just a crowd of employees. And I'd get into politics with them, and I'd say, oh, well, Tauzin, I'm going to talk about Republicans and Democrats. No, it's not about Democrats or Republicans, please. It's not even about keeping your job here in America. It's about what we do in this industry and what you do in not only making these great products, but delivering them and developing all the new delivery systems that are much more friendly to patients. It's whether or not we can continue to do that and whether patients will continue to benefit from it. I'm going to wrap it up. We're going to go to a panel in a minute. But I want to tell you a quick story. What we do is critical. I didn't realize it until my life was on the line, until Dr. Wolf told me 5 years later, after all this cancer treatment, that he gave me less than 1% chance to survive. I didn't realize it until I realized what a miracle my second chance life is really all about, and I got to feeling really good about it. I remember when he told me I was going to die, I said, oh, geez, I'll never see a grandchild. I'll never walk my daughter down the aisle. And then I did. I ended up with 2 beautiful grandboys. I just got a beautiful new granddaughter. And I walked my daughter down the aisle. And I got to feeling really good about myself, and then it dawned on me. I got it backwards. The beauty of what you do, the beauty of what innovation in healthcare and medicine and delivery systems really does, is that there are 2 little grandboys and 1 little grandgirl who have a grandfather. That's the beauty. They still have a grandfather they almost lost. They got a grandfather that loved them and nurtured them and cared for them. And my daughter had a father to walk her down the aisle on that so important day for daughters. That's the beauty. That's what we fight for in this industry. That's why we gather and talk about all your great new innovations. And that's why we fight politically, so that people in Washington and in the state capitals around our country realize how critical the work we do. It's not just about dollars, and it's not just about saving lives. It's about creating a future for the young Americans who follow us, and about making sure their grandparents are around for grandkids, and fathers are around to walk their daughters down the aisle. Thank you very much.